less lethal options. Some of the viable options that we were able to discover are on this list right here. You have the pepperball technologies, the Pixon, the third one is the Hersto group, which is an impact weapon. The first two are chemical agent propelled instruments, and the last two on the right are actually your electronic control weapons, the two companies. We're looking at the electronic control weapons because as we look at the other options available, we currently have them. We currently have impact weapons in terms of batons. We also have impact weapons in terms of our projectiles from the shotguns. But we did not have a weapon system that was readily available on an officer's person that met the needs that go from an impact weapon to a firearm. And that's why we're looking at the electronic control weapons. What I have for you tonight, and actually have a number of these handouts, these are actually just the front cover, a copy of the front cover of various studies and guidelines that we've reviewed. It would be too voluminous to have made copies for everyone. This is just one study. So just what I'll do though, I'll give you a summary of these studies. This first study is called Comparing Safety Outcomes in Police Use of Force Cases for Law Enforcement Agencies that have deployed conducted energy devices in a matched comparison group that have not. This study is from September of 2009. The purpose of this project was to provide scientifically valid results that would inform law enforcement executives' decisions regarding electronic control weapon use. The goal of the study was to produce practical information that could help law enforcement agencies establish guidelines that assist in the effective design of electronic control weapon deployment programs and that support increased safety for officers and our citizens. The means was to compare law enforcement agencies with ECW deployments to a set of matched law enforcement agencies that do not deploy electronic control weapons on a variety of safety outcomes. The overall finding was that agencies that had electronic control weapon systems associated with improved safety outcomes when compared to a group of non-agencies that did not have it, had improved areas of safety of 6 of 9 points. Now mind you, each one of these studies is online, and once again, if you want copies of this, you're free to take it for easy reference later. An example of a second study is this one here. It's called The Police Use of Force, Tasers and Other Less Lethal Weapons. This study was comprised by the National Institute of Justice. The researchers analyzed some 25,000 use of force incidents from 12 large law enforcement agencies. A study that found that when officers use force of any kind, injury rates to citizens range from 17 to 64%, while officer injuries range from 10 to 20%. The use of physical force by officers increased the odds of injuries to officers and suspects alike. However, the use of pepper spray and electronic control weapons decreased the likelihood of suspect injury by 65 to 75% respectively. Researchers further analyzed the experiences of several law enforcement agencies to learn how introducing electronic control weapons affected injury rates. This approach tracked injuries before and after electronic control weapon introduction and included more than 10,000 uses of force incidents. A large drop in injury rates for suspects and officers occurred alike when following electronic control weapon introduction. The researchers noted that good policies and training would require that officers evaluate the age, the size, the sex, apparent physical capabilities, and health concerns of a suspect before using electronic control weapon. In addition, policies and training should prohibit electronic control weapon use in the presence of flammable liquids or in circumstances where falling would pose a reasonable risk to the suspect, such as in elevated areas, or adjacent to traffic. Policies and training should also address the use of electronic control weapons on suspects who are handcuffed or otherwise restrained, and should either prohibit their use outright or limit them in clearly defined aggravated circumstances. As you look at the working draft that the department has crafted, each one of these issues that I have presented thus far has been addressed. As of 2010, electronic control weapons have been procured by more than 12,000 law enforcement agencies across the United States, with approximately 260,000 devices used by law enforcement officers nationwide. The second to last study here is a study in May of 2011 by the National Institute of Justice, once again, on studying the deaths following the use of electronic control weapons. One of the conclusions was the risk of death in electronic control weapon related use is less than 0.25%. That's this report here.
What's the name of that report again?
This report is called The Study of Deaths Following Electromuscular Disruption.
Thank you.
From May of 2011. In August of 2011, a group of police chiefs from across the country, academics as well as medical professionals met in order to revise the previous set of guidelines that this group had put in place. It was a joint project of the Police Executive Research Forum as well as the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services at the U.S. Department of Justice. Their guidelines have approximately 151 points in terms of what departments should look at before implementing such a program. We have addressed each and every one of those points. That's this document right here. Lastly, in terms of major research, we relied upon even our own homegrown Dr. Zhang, who presented before the Police Commission. In real-world use of the effects of taser use. In his recommendation, he concluded that tasers may serve a useful role in law enforcement, but policies should be designed taking into account the risk. Due to the risk of sudden death, tasers should only be deployed for situations in which subjects are in imminent threat or serious harm to self or others. Avoid vectoring, avoid using the device across the chest, avoid use in thin persons, avoid repeated shocks. And in the instance that a taser is actually used in discharge, automatic electronic defibrillators should be also mandated to allow for rapid resuscitation. And each one of these recommendations has been included in our working document policy. This discussion has not been new. This discussion of the implementation of electronic control weapons began with Chief Heather Fong, followed up by Chief George Gascon, then Acting Chief Godin. The difference in what Chief Sir is recommending is that we not do a full-scale implementation, which is actually in the best practice of chiefs across the country, is that we not do a widespread wholesale implementation, but do it in a controlled fashion with our most trained or most capable, and that's precisely why the recommendation is to move forward with the implementation of an electronic control weapon program with a small group, less than 5% of our department, on the heels of extensive research and obviously the input from our community. With that said, I'll turn it back over to the Chief.
That concludes the department's presentation, and we look forward to the discussion, question, and answer portion of the evening.
Sir?
Okay, so folks, there is no time limit on questions. But we do ask you to be respectful to allow other people to ask questions. And if you have a question, you can step to the microphone.
Commissioner Sherman, could I go first? I need to keep videoing, and I just want to speak first and then sit down.